I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you a special edition of the Talk Louder podcast from the Rockin' Pod Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. For those who aren't familiar, Rockin' Pod is an annual event that brings together podcasters, rock musicians, vendors, comedians. It's basically just a great big rock and roll geek fest, and we couldn't have been happier to have been there and been part of it. We had numerous guests throughout the event, and the first one that we had on March 18th was Stevie Rachelle from the band Tough. You also know him as the mastermind, if that's the word you wanted to use. Some people may argue that. He's the man behind the Metal Sludge website.
There you go.
Been around since 98, 99, something like that. So I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast is familiar with the Metal Sludge website.
He's the number one fire starter behind Metal Sludge.
There you go. Firestarter. That's a better title maybe for Stevie. He was a great guest. I've known him for a number of years, but we kind of lost contact. We first became acquainted when he was managing a band called Veins of Jenna out of Sweden.
Oh, yeah.
And at the time, I was writing for Classic Rock Magazine out of the UK, and he was managing this upcoming band from Sweden called Veins of Jenna. And he reached out to me to see if he could get some press. We collaborated. We did some interviews. I got the band featured in the magazine, and then me and the band became friendly. So Stevie and I had a little bit of a history, and it was great to connect with him again because he's a high energy dude. He tells it like it is. He's brutally honest. He'll even make fun of himself, which is probably the best part.
That's
and it was great spending time with him.
That's why I think it was good to see him and talk to him like for real for once, right?
Yeah.
Other than just at a bar or whatever, you know. The interesting thing about him is that he will make fun of himself in the first sentence. You know, in whatever you're going to ask him, he'll be able to like wear his heart on his sleeve, and you know, I like how he talked about. I don't want to blow everything, but how he talked about, Mom, I want my hair to be white. You're already blonde. What do you mean? Oh no, I want it like this. And he's pointing at rock and roll stars. You know,
right.
Like, so he goes in the garage looking for Clorox, you know, I'm gonna pour Clorox on my head, right? No. Yeah. So, you know, whatever. He's obviously making fun of himself when he's talking about that. But I liked hearing about his humble beginnings, about, you know, how he's just a skateboard punk.
Yeah.
From Wisconsin. Yeah, Wisconsin.
Yeah, he was great fun. Like you said, even if he's attacking you, you kind of still have to like him because he's attacking himself in the same sentence.
He is.
And he's just high energy, and he's got stories for days. And because of his line of work and through the Metal Sludge website, he's been in contact with everybody under the sun in the world of rock and roll. So no end to the stories from Stevie, no end to his energy. And he was our first interview of the morning. So if the coffee didn't wake you up, here comes Stevie.
He was all guns blazing for sure.
Right off the bat.
I appreciate the guy a lot. And like I said a second ago, I really learned a lot. Like there was things going, say what? Say that? What? You know, just the scene, he was talking about members of Tough being part of the Phoenix metal scene, and they were already a band out in Los Angeles area. And when he joined, a lot of people I didn't know that Jim Gillette was the first singer for Tough.
Yeah.
Who knows that? I don't know that. I didn't know
that.
Yeah, I did not know that. So, you know, and there are a lot of people know about Jim Gillette because of his ads in you know, rock magazines as being a vocal coach or whatever.
Right.
You know, get lessons from me. Here's my 1-800 number kind of a guy. So
and his band Nitro. And,
that's right. That's right.
But I think Tough, you know, came on the public's radar with Stevie as the front man. That's why some people may not realize Jim Gillette was there first, but Stevie was the guy on the album covers and on MTV and on the radio, that sort of thing.
He was the juice. He was working that band really hard. So,
and you can see why. I mean, anything this guy is involved in, he's going to be the juice because he's definitely a leader.
Well,
and he doesn't shy away from attention.
He's kind of like the monster. If you rip out his heart and he keeps killing you, that's what's going on. You got to love that.
Yeah. Well, he was great fun. Definitely a great wake-up call first thing in the morning at Rock and Pod Expo. He was kind enough to send us some T-shirts after the fact, and we appreciate that, and we appreciated the time with him and the ongoing friendship that will continue via email, etc. So, Stevie Rachelle on the Talk Louder podcast today. What's up, everybody? Metal Dave Glessner here with my co-host Jason McMaster at the Talk Louder podcast. We are here at the Rock and Pod Expo in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're joined this morning by our guest, Stevie Rachelle. How are you, man?
I'm great.
Thanks for
Jason,
being here.
Dave, thank you very much for having me.
You're so welcome.
Some metal love there.
Good to see you. Thank you for being here.
To everybody out there in podcast land, internet land, web world, whatever we're calling it. Thanks for tuning in.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Welcome to Talk Louder, the Rock and Pod episodes.
Yeah, we're doing special episodes here at the Rock and Pod Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. We've never been here before. It's our first time. You're our first guest. So there's some, hey, we're off to a good start.
And he showed up early. And so now we can get one or two more questions in.
Yeah.
And when you say you've never been here, you mean you guys together as this? Because I know you've been here at some point on a stage somewhere.
A ton of times.
Right.
I've destroyed Nashville many times. But the point is we are a fairly new podcast. We have, 150 or something shit episodes sounds like you've been around a long time, but it's a weekend warrior thing when available kind of thing. That's how we do this. So.
Yeah, but know for yourself, we were just talking off camera earlier. Right. When you start to do something like this and it starts to take off, it becomes a full-time job.
It does.
So we stay busy with it,
And people have said to me for some period now, why don't you do a podcast? You're funny. You talk a lot. You got all the insight. I'm like, why I'm not doing a podcast? Let me give you some reasons. I have a son. I have a daughter. I have a band called Tough. I have another band in Germany. I have a band I play with in Brazil. I have a website. I have a Twitter, a Facebook, an Instagram, a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like at some point, there's only so many hours in the day. And then okay, let me invest in some equipment, some cameras, some phones.
Yeah, right.
And then have somebody stand there is like, be at my house at this time or be on Zoom at this time. And And then the people you're talking to are like, dude, I got to pick up my kids from soccer practice. And
they're in the same boat.
Yeah. So it's juggling. There's a lot of things to juggle. And so I'm not doing a podcast.
Where are you from?
Yeah.
Where are you from originally?
Wisconsin.
All right.
Oshkosh, Bagosh.
Far out.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
You didn't know that? Yeah.
So
he's a cheesehead.
I'm a Packer fan.
All right.
Bleeding green and gold since birth.
Okay.
And so originally from Wisconsin, I was playing around in local bands, got the real bug in '84.
Okay.
Saw Motley on the Shout at the Devil tour.
Perfect.
Van Halen on the 1984 tour.
Perfect.
Rat on the Out of the Cellar tour, all within 3 months.
Wow.
Previous to that, never been in a band, never sang, never had anything to do with heavy metal. I was a skateboarder, had a half pipe in my backyard. I was borderline about to turn pro as a skater.
Okay.
And I saw those 3 concerts and I was like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Didn't say I want to do it.
You're gonna.
I'm going to do that.
You got bit by the bug.
So I started hanging out with my friends that were like, dude, Saturday at Goober's house, there's a jam. Dan's his name. His nickname is Goober. He's a drummer. And I'd show up, there'd be like 3 drummers, 3 basses, 3 guitarists. This guy had an amp. This guy had a PV backstage 40 watt.
Perfect.
This guy had a keyboard. No singers. None.
Wow.
And they're playing all these different songs. And then there was one guy that got up here, a guy from school who was very smart, 4.0, kind of nerdy. And he sang a song. And then they were going to do White Wedding by Billy Idol. I was like, I know that. It's a nice day for a white wedding. Got up there, sang a couple parts. The girls in the garage were like, oh. no, Steve. And everyone like, Steve, the girls like you. Sing another one, you know?
Yeah.
And then they were playing like Living After Midnight, you know, and I heard that on the radio.
Sure.
Yeah.
Living After Midnight, you know? And so I kind of became the singer by default because all I had to do was be cooler than this nerdy 4.0 guy, you know, and I already had an earring.
See, you were already
Garrett hair, you know?
You were rock and roll before you knew it.
Yeah.
But that hair, so you've told me this in the past, you started bleaching your hair because you liked Vince Neil's white hair. How much hair did you lose in the process of frying it out?
At this point, most of it. But yeah,
Well,
so
yeah,
I come home from seeing the Shout at the Devil show.
Yeah.
And I tell my mom, I want my hair white.
Platinum.
Bleached. Yeah.
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 And I'm a blonde.
Yeah.
I'm a blonde hair, blue-eyed, you know, looking skateboarder Leaf Garrett kid. She's like, Steven, your hair is blonde. I was like, no, Mom, I want it like this. So I showed her a picture and she goes, that's burned.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I burn my hair? She goes, you need to use bleach. So next, you know, I'm in the basement by the washing machine looking for gallons of bleach.
Oh, no.
I'm literally ready to pour it over my head. She's like, you can't do that. You got to go to a salon, you know. And then I asked my girlfriend, she's like, oh, you can get highlights and put sun in, you know. And so then,
go easy.
Yeah.
You didn't go easy. You went hardcore.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I went from, you know, the blonde haired skater kid to like platinum, like King Cobra, you know, Johnny Rod style.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
that was my,
All right.
that was the kicker. right
Everyone knows you from Tough, your band Tough, and of course Metal Sludge. I wanted to ask you a question that people might not know. There was a time when you managed a band called Veins of Jenna,
Yep.
and I was a big fan of theirs. And you brought them to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest one year. That's when I met the guys. That kind of became a bit of a friendship. And they seemed to have the goods. And you were their manager. What happened there? When did you guys stop working together, and why?
Well, I met them in the summer of 2005, and we were playing, and I say we, meaning Tough. We had only I'd only relaunched the band a handful of years earlier, and we were playing Crew Fest at the Whiskey A Go-Go. It's like a Motley Crue tribute thing they do every summer, and we were the headliner. But I went really early to set up merchandise and T-shirts, and it's a Saturday, so they open the doors at 4:00, and people are already showing up. So I'm there at 3 p.m. hanging shirts, and the first band was this band from Sweden called Veins of Jenna. Funny name.
Yeah.
What does it mean? No one knows.
Yeah.
And I looked up on stage as they kicked into the first song, and I was like, oh my God, there's like Hanoi Rocks and Guns N' Roses had 4 abortions, and right now they're on stage, you know?
I love that.
Yeah. And then I went up in the dressing room and I met them, and they're like, 2 of them had just graduated high school.
Yeah.
They were teenagers. They couldn't
Right.
even drink legally in the States.
Yeah.
They'd only been a band for 6 months, and I'm like, where are you from? And they're like, oh, Falkenberg, Sweden, you know? And I was like, where the fuck is Falkenberg, you know? And their birthdays are like in 1986,
Yeah,
you know? I was just like, you were born in 86. So I just thought there was something there. Like you said, there was something magical about them. So I said, where are you staying? They're like, we're at the Days Inn. Give me your phone number. What room are you in? You know, they're only here for like another 4 days. So I called up Gilby Clark and I said, I need you to demo a band for me. He's like, okay, well, I just got off tour with Heart. When do you want to do it? The next couple of weeks is kind of busy. I'm like, it's got to be within the next 72 hours. He's like, are you out of your mind? I'm so crazy busy. So I said, dude, let me come over. I just want to show you something. I want to play you. They had a demo. And Gilby said the same thing. He goes, I think there's something here. They remind me of like a baby Guns N' Roses or something.
Yeah.
There's something deeper going on. So Gilby did a demo. 2 years later, we're signed on the Poison Rat Amphitheater tour. You know, they were on BAM's TV, you know, Viva La Bam. They were on LA Inc. with Kat Von D. Everybody loved them.
Yeah.
Tracy Guns loved them. Cece loved them. Piercy loved them. DeMartini loved them. Like everybody was like, these kids, there's something going on with them, you know? So, but after 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, you know, now they're 25, 26. The guitarist is fighting with the singer. One guy wants to get married. One guy thinks he's in love with some girl that he just met, you know, and the typical band stuff happens.
Yeah.
They're infighting. And so, you know, after half a dozen years, it just kind of fizzled and faded. And now they're all old men, you know, they're like 40.
Well,
It's
the
like
music's out there.
Menudo, you age out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the music's out there for anyone listening that's not aware of Veins of Jenna. If you like what you heard,
Great
Stevie's
band.
description, yeah, Baby Guns N' Roses meets Hanoi Rocks, that type
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah. Metal Sludge. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's the longest running feud you've started on Metal Sludge?
Well, I don't know if we've started it, but we've probably perpetuated some of it.
You're the gasoline.
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone started the fire, you do
Yeah.
walk. Oh,
We
I'm
just-
sorry. Let me pour this
Yeah,
gasoline.
let me drive
here.
by with a 55-gallon drum of gas and just push it off the back of the pickup.
Okay, that's. See, I've never heard it put quite that way. I'm glad I could help perform that.
Yeah. Okay, maybe not a 55-gallon drum, maybe a train car full
Yeah. Hey, shit happens.
Right.
What is it? The feud?
Well, it probably was the LA Guns versus LA Guns versus LA Guns,
okay,
you know.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But obviously Tracy and Phil have, you know, they've reconciled and made a couple of
Making
great records.
Great records,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
But you know, back just one step, it could have insert band name here. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's
sure.
Sebastian
that was,
Skid Row.
was happening a while.
Jack
for a while.
Great White,
Yeah.
Janie Warren,
Which is unfortunate,
Jeff Queensryche.
but everybody
Yeah.
has their own story as to reasons why, especially with the Queensryche and the Tate and the Bach and the Skid Row.
and Rat, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
all of them.
yeah.
at
Goes
this
on
point.
and on.
But you know, when you
Yeah.
think about, we don't know them. I mean, really know
Right.
them. So whatever's
Correct.
happening behind those doors, there's a reason why it's not happening,
Right.
and people need to leave it alone. That's what I
Right.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, what Metal Sludge did, and when we started this, was in 1998.
Yeah.
No, we didn't know what the internet was. There
Yeah.
was no such thing as social media. Nobody
Right.
had a. Most
right.
people didn't even have an email, much less a .com or a
It was
website
still
Right.
soon.
Right.
in the infant stages.
Yes, that's
You're a pioneer.
And so we were like, my idea was like, I want to create somewhere where people who like this music can go online and talk. And at some point, I remember we created this little forum chat room, and somebody would go on there and go, I love Sleazebees. Stranger Than Paradise is amazing. And then somebody else would go on, dude, I love that band. You know, where are you from? I'm from Denver. I'm from Denmark. They're from here. You know, I grew up with the drummer, you know,
Wow.
and somebody else from Omaha, and somebody from San Antonio,
Yeah.
and somebody from Bakersfield. And so there was this community of like, hey, if you go on here, people are talking about Johnny Crash and Pariah, you know,
Yeah.
like the really obscure bands that didn't really get that next level shot.
Well, came out a little late, maybe.
Right.
Stuff like that.
So, and then people would be like, talking about your band, for instance, Dangerous, they're like, well, you know, he was in Watchtower. And somebody would go like, Watchtower? Who's Watchtower? And they're like, dude, you got to do some homework, you know?
If anything, the historical like lineage of an artist or a band or these, wow, that guy used to be what? Whoa, who's that? Dude, fans are fans are fans. They're constantly learning. You actually had created something inadvertently, a place for people to learn about their favorite people.
Right.
And ultimately, and this is not limited to, but sold the catalog.
Yeah.
Help them buy a fish sandwich and put gas in the car.
100%.
Keep the
And,
lights
you know,
on.
there's
Yeah.
people, there's a girl that just came up to my table and she's looking at a picture of Jim Gillette's Proud to Be Loud. And
Yeah.
she's like, is that you? And I said, no, that's Jim Gillette, who used to be in Tough,
Right.
but then he left Tough, it formed Nitro.
Right.
And it's almost like the Pantera thing. Like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of people don't realize that those guys had a different singer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah.
They were, you know, Rex Rocker and
Yeah.
Diamond Daryl.
Yeah,
not
Diamond
Dimebag
Daryl, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you were part of that scene. So you
Vinnie
grew up with
Paul
those
was
guys.
always Vinnie Paul.
And,
which
and Terry was the
Terry
singer.
Glaze, yeah.
And Phil was singing in what, Razor White. You
Correct.
know? And so there's a lot of the early stuff is what people go, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, yeah, Cowboys from Hell is their 4th album.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, somebody said to me, oh, I thought you formed Tough. And I was like, Tough was already a band for 3 years and went through a
Yeah.
singer and went from Phoenix, where they're from, to LA. And previous to that, George was playing in a band called Metal Beast with Jason Jason Newsted before
Wow.
Flotsam.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So George was like, you know, the metal kid on the block. And of course, Todd Chason and his brothers are
Yeah.
Kenny
Yeah.
from
That's
Teal and
Yeah.
Greg.
Yeah.
So those guys as 13, 14
It's
year
a
olds.
family of bass players.
Yeah. Everybody's a bassist.
I love it.
Right.
And so Todd and George were like 13, 14 and hanging out with their older brother, you know, Greg and Kenny. And then they're taking them to parties where, you know, Rob Halford's hanging out and the guys from Sacred Reich are hanging out.
Yeah.
And Jason had just moved there, I think, from Michigan.
Correct.
And there was that whole scene in Phoenix,
Yeah.
Sacred Reich, Flotsam and Jetsam.
Yeah.
And so they were part of that. They were originally more metal.
Yeah.
The earliest version of Pretty Tough was them guys doing,
Yeah.
like, they looked like Defenders of the Faith, you know,
Yeah.
they were doing
Yeah.
Judas Priest stuff.
Leather.
But then they were like, hey, this Rat band is getting a lot more, there's a lot of girls at that show compared to the last Saxon Motorhead show we went to.
Right.
So they kind of like pivoted and
Okay.
said, let's be a
Well,
little bit more poppy.
their hormones were writing their songs instead of their well, it was
Right.
their balls
Right.
writing their songs
Right.
instead of their brains.
Yeah. So, you know, those guys were all into Motorhead, Saxon, Maiden, Priest.
Well,
but then
they-
the common
they-
denominator was Van Halen,
Yeah.
which brought us all to be a little more of a
people
showman.
who like Motorhead and Venom, they
Right.
like Van Halen too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
They just won't say it
And-
out loud sometimes.
And Van Halen won, but they
Right.
like Van Halen too, and Van Halen won.
Right.
How did you come up with your stage name?
Stevie Rachelle.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in my first band, which was called Exciter,
Mm-hmm.
X-ITER, we're
Okay.
playing locally. We go to the music store, and at some point, we see Exciter from Canada.
Right. I wore my Exciter shirt last night.
CITER.
Yeah.
We're like, who are these guys? They spell the name different. Fuck it, we're keeping our name. You know, so we were Exciter, and I was Steve Lox's
Okay.
in Exciter.
Okay.
So when I go to LA, I meet Tough, and at some point, you know, they're asking me important questions. How long is your hair?
Yeah.
Oh,
How, you know, what's your stage name?
Right.
And I said, Steve Lox's. And Todd looks at me and he's like, what is Lox's? And I go,
Wow.
it's sexual spelled backwards. He's like, dude, that's not going to work.
yeah.
You need a better stage name. And, you know,
That's
my
fair.
Yeah, my real name is Stephen Howard Hansetter. Like, that's not a rock star's name. You can't be
No.
Steve Howard or
No,
Steve.
that's Hansetter and Hansetter. You're my attorney.
Yeah, exactly. German.
Yeah.
So at some point, my childhood sweetheart, her middle name was Rachel.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and Michael said, there's Stephen Piercy, Steven Tyler, Steve Stevens. You know, there's a lot of Steves and Stevens, but there's no Stevies really.
Yeah.
No one's going to confuse you with Stevie Wonder
or
Yeah.
Stevie Ray
Or
Vaughan.
or Stevie Ray Vaughan
Vaughan.
or Stevie Nicks. So why don't you be Stevie?
Maybe Stevie Nicks.
So Michael was the one who said, let's migrate Steve or Steven to Stevie. And then I was Stevie Rachel, which kind of, at some point we said, let's make it Rachelle,
Yeah.
which rhymed with from hell, you know?
Right. Or more European.
Yeah. And my old manager nicknamed me that Stevie Rachelle from hell because he said I was hell to
Pain
deal
in the
with.
ass.
Yeah, pain in the ass. So Lox's was the original stage name. And they're like, dude, that's not
Wow.
going to work.
I think that was a good move. That
Yeah.
was probably a good move. Yeah. How many times down the street did you get confused for Bret Michaels?
I mean, that happened a lot, but here's the thing. When I was playing around in Wisconsin, end of 84, 85, 86, before Poison was on the map for us nationally, of course,
Yeah.
if you lived in LA, you knew them. So now that look what the cat drag comes in, but it was like the summer of 86, I'm already kind of becoming a little bit of a popular celebrity star in Wisconsin. I'd go to concerts, and people would like, who are you? You know, I'm going to King Cobra and Dokken and Rat and Warrant, or not Warrant, White Snake or whoever. And then people are like, dude, there's this band on Headbangers Ball. The singer looks just like you, you know? And I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, they're called Poison, you know? So I'd been hearing that from some people.
Well, it's a compliment too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's not like they compared me, you know, to somebody that looked like he got hit by a bus, you know?
No, not
Yeah.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah, I wasn't worn out like that. So they're like, oh,
Sorry,
this is-
Danny.
Yeah, we love you. And the tacos. I've eaten at those restaurants. But anyways, everyone's like, yeah, there's this guy that looks just like you. And then it was some people from high school that knew I got in a band. They're like, hey, we heard Steve got signed. He's in a band now, you know, which I was, but they were mistaking me for this video they were seeing.
Right.
And so Brett was the Stevie clone in Wisconsin for about 6 months until they went triple platinum.
Yeah.
And then I became
You became the
dude, why are you trying to look like him? I was like, I was trying to be David Lee Roth. I don't know what happened.
Whoops.
Well, Stevie, man, we thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. You're always
Dude, we
high
could do this
energy
for
and-
2 hours. I'm
Yeah,
going to have to
I
come
know.
on. We're going to have
Come
to
on.
do a
Yeah,
Yeah,
join our
we'll
show.
do it. We'll do it again, and when we get back to Texas and
Right.
edit all this, we'll reach out and we'll do
Yeah.
a regular.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you for being just such a good sport and funny guy, and being able to laugh with us. Trying to. I think you've always been able to make fun of yourself and have a good time, and you've always been super kind. And you appreciate
I will say this as well. You know, there was a point about 10 years ago. I'm in Europe on tour with this band called Shameless that I sing for part-time.
Yeah.
And we got on this festival date, and it was Hardcore Superstar, Dangerous Toys, Vain, Crash Diet, Shameless with Stevie Tough, you know, blah, 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 all these bands.
I think it was going to be Quiet Riot, and they had to cancel.
And at some point, me and him and Davey Vain are standing backstage at this small convention center in Mulheim, Germany, and I'm going, Texas, Frisco, Hollywood, we're still here. And we all shook hands. And do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was like you, me, and Davey were like, dude, can you believe this? Like, it's, 25 years later, we're on the other side of the planet. And there was 2,000 or 3,000 people there that night. It was great.
It was a fun time.
Really cool, ships passing in the night.
Right. It's still doing
and we've
it.
done the same with you when I've been through Texas. You'd come out to the shows. You and me were there when Dee came through with Widowmaker, and we hung out and watched the show. And Dee had some good words with us at Soundcheck, and the same with Davey. But it's great to see some of these.
It's great that you're still doing it, both of you. I mean, we were talking earlier about look how far your passion has taken you all these years later.
Right.
And, it's you're doing it for the love, and it just never goes away. It's not something.
I don't have a mansion.
It wasn't a phase.
No, I don't have a Porsche.
No one does.
There's
no one does.
With the exception of a handful of guys, the Motleys, the Guns N' Roses.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
They sold enough records that they could splurge a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here and sharing your stories, man. Always a pleasure.
Dude, awesome.
Stevie Rachelle, ladies and gentlemen, on the Talk
thank you
Louder
so much,
podcast. Thank you, man.
Appreciate
Keep
you,
listening.
Stevie. Thank you.
Rock and roll.
Thanks, man.